Welcome, my name is Katrina and today we'll be discussing speech sound disorders in lower primary education. Education Queensland states that literacy is the key to lifelong learning. A child who is literate will use their language with confidence in speaking, reading and writing. Some students may exhibit difficulty in acquiring skills that are involved with speech and language acquisition. Speech sound disorders affect students' ability to be effective communicators, and as a result, students are at risk of adverse educational, social, and occupational outcomes. The idea of equity in education has been around for some time. Today's teachers face challenges to make their classroom more equitable and effective for all learners. Teachers cannot teach under the assumption that equal means the same. Students come from diverse cultures, language backgrounds, values and lifestyles. All young people have a right to gain an education that meets their needs and prepares them for an active participation in a socially equitable and democratic society free from discrimination. The Melbourne Declaration of Education Goals for Young Australians state that Australian schooling are committed to promoting equity and excellence. Principles of fairness and social justice ensures that children from different social backgrounds or class have an equal start in adult life. A speech sound disorder, or more commonly known as a speech impairment, involves a difficulty with and/or the slowness in development of a child's speech. Most children make mistakes as they learn to say new words. However, a speech sound disorder occurs when mistakes continue past the certain age, affecting the child's ability to communicate. Speech sound disorders involve the problems associated with the phonological process, which is the sound patterns, or the articulation, making the sounds. Speech sound disorders is an extremely broad term that encompasses a range of specific issues and levels of severity. The two main types of speech sound disorders are articulation disorder and phonological disorder. A child with an articulation disorder displays a difficulty making sounds. Articulation disorder can be characterized by substitution or distortion of sounds, omission, and changed or additional sounds in words. For example, a child may say nana for the correct word banana, or wabbit for the correct term rabbit. A phonological disorder is a pattern of sound errors in a child's speech. Children with a phonological disorder may be able to hear the sound distinctions in other people's voices, but unaware when they make the distortion. A child with a phonological disorder can produce the sound correctly, but may use it in the incorrect place. A very common example is replacing the g sound with the d, saying do for go, or tat is commonly used for the correct term cat. Children who experience speech sound disorders may have reduced capacity to interact with others, participate fully in education, and engage in life activities. As a result, this can continue into adulthood. Children with speech sound disorders are also at risk for short and long-term difficulties in reading, writing, academic, social, and emotional well-being, which ultimately impacts on our teaching and their learning, now and for the future. In recent studies, results have shown that children with speech sound disorder are at greater risk of associated problems with reading, decoding, comprehension, spelling, and written language. Children with speech sound disorders have difficulty with phonological awareness tasks. As a result, difficulties in reading acquisition and spelling are common. As we know, each and every student is different, and not all children will display the same difficulties in the classroom. The table you see provides you with the common impacts on our teaching and the students' learning. Students may display difficulty with reading and decoding, poor phonic awareness, problems in language development, often display difficulty in understanding semantics and syntax, have poor spelling, difficulty understanding and expressing language, and often have misunderstood social cues. Students with speech sound disorders need a supportive and caring learning environment that encourages respect and diversity. As beginning teachers, we need to differentiate our planning to meet the specific learning needs and abilities of students with speech sound disorders. It is important to implement activities that support and encourage participation and learning for all students. Knowing the content and how to teach it is vitally important. So is knowing and understanding literacy concepts and strategies to support students' literacy development. An article written by Overby, Carroll and Bethaniel on teachers' perceptions found that teachers have negative attitudes towards children with speech difficulties. It is our responsibility as beginning teachers to ensure we follow the professional teaching standards and the code of ethics at all times and include students with speech sound disorders in activities, provide more opportunities to talk in collaboration, and give extra time to listen. McLeod and Baker's study in 2004 showed nearly half of a paediatric speech therapist caseloads of a speech sound disorder. However, the actual statistics for speech sound disorder is still being studied due to an alarming rate of children not being assessed or getting the support and help they need. In a recent interview with a speech therapist at a Brisbane North State school, it's reported that there was a higher prevalence in boys to girls, and 22.3% of teacher-reported cases were children who were considered less competent than others in expressive language ability. So this just shows that the earlier the beginning teachers seek support, the better for the student. The speech-language pathologist at the forefront of speech sound disorders in Australia is Carolyn Brown. Carolyn states that the development of a child's literacy will be compromised if the child is not intelligible by the time they start formal literacy instruction. Speech sound disorder forms a high percentage of speech-language pathologist caseloads in schools, with 50 to 70% of the students having academic difficulty and risk of literacy problems. With the high prevalence and many studies, the precise etiology is unknown. However, there are many possible causes such as glue ear, cleft palate, and autism, just to name a few. Beginning teachers should be aware of the general indicators they may observe in students with speech sound disorder. Carolyn Brown indicates that students with speech sound disorders may display some of the common characteristics and sound errors past the expected age of development. The main characteristics of speech sound disorders, which were touched on earlier, are substitution, which is when one sound is used in place of another; distortion, a sound that is slightly changed and made incorrectly; omission, certain sounds are completely left out; and additions, an extra sound is added to a word. The Hearing and Speech Agency is an American hearing and speech service which has indicated some common characteristics of speech sound disorders that we as beginning teachers may see in the classroom. Students may exhibit mispronunciation of frequent occurring words. They may have difficulty producing rhyming words, improper use of words and their meaning, the inability to express ideas, the inappropriate grammatical patterns, inability to follow instructions, and auditory perception errors, which is perceiving a word to be similar sounding to the word that was spoken. Phonological and articulation approaches provide a systematic and efficient method for removing error patterns in a child's speech. A phonological awareness program uses the continuum to build students' phonological awareness and skills to recognize that words are made up of a variety of sounds. Phonological awareness includes two important elements: awareness and sensitivity to speech, and ability to manipulate the sound structures in words. Speech pathologists target phonological awareness by encompassing phonemic awareness by teaching students with speech sound disorders that words are made up of individual sounds, and the ability to manipulate these sounds by blending, segmenting, or changing individual sounds within words to create different words. Each school implements a synthetic phonetic program designed to assist students in reading and writing. Most common are Jolly Phonics or sound waves. However, adaptations and strategies may be needed for students with speech sound disorders. Articulation therapy is utilised more so by speech pathologists when a child has difficulty articulating one or more sounds. Students with articulation disorder are systematically trained through the 7 levels of articulation therapy to produce the target sound. A child with speech sound disorder can be successfully included in a supportive learning environment. As a beginning teacher, we can assist students with speech sound disorder by incorporating everyday experiences and explicit instruction that encourages literacy learning. Students with speech sound disorder need extra time to listen to conversations and instructions, as well as need more opportunities to talk. Teachers need to differentiate their planning to ensure students with speech sound disorder are catered for and included in the classroom. With this in mind, my plan is to support students in lower primary with speech sound disorder by providing opportunities to build literacy acquisition in a supportive learning environment. There are many opinions and advice from experts in the field. However, my plan follows a language-based approach to speech sound disorders by Carolyn Brown. As we know, early intervention is best. A key feature of the plan is to do a speech screen on students in the lower primary. The brief screening will analyse students' communication in areas of phonics, literacy skills, comprehension, expressive skills, and speech sound productions. After the screening has been assessed, steps would be taken to refer any student who needs extra support to the school's speech therapist. However, due to the overwhelming need of the speech therapist in urban schools, it can take a long time before a child is seen. With this in mind, specific classroom strategies will need to be implemented. As beginning teachers, we can use many inclusive strategies to ensure students with speech sound disorders are catered for and included within the classroom. Jane Passey's cued articulation enhances literacy teaching by a set of hand cues for teaching the individual sounds in a word. The hand movements are logical. Each hand movement represents one sound and gives clues as to how and where the sound is produced. Cued articulation provides students with visual and kinesthetic information. Alongside cued articulation, teachers should colour code the different areas of articulation in words written to assist students in spelling and prompt correct sound. Cued articulation works well with many of the literacy and phonetic programs in schools today. Also being used is Pelican Talks Sound Stories, and this is a great resource to use within the classroom. Sound stories support students' language difficulties by providing them with a fun framework upon to build phonological awareness and oral language. Further from the cued articulation and sound stories, a variety of classroom strategies will need to be used to enhance our teaching pedagogy. Some effective strategies include pointing to words or letters in a book during shared reading and model the correct articulation of the sounds. It's also important to build on words the student knows by using synonyms, antonyms, or words that begin with or rhyme, and helps to build students' oral language. Creating interest with letter names and sounds using everyday materials. This includes their name. Using their name to practice letter formation and letter sound recognition in sand or with blocks is a great way to engage students. And it's also important that we as teachers ensure that the amount of spoken or written information processed is manageable for students with speech sound disorders. There are many iPad and computer programs available to assist students with speech sound disorders. The Extra Learning Resources, or ELR, provide activities in the areas of phonology, phonological awareness, reading and spelling, semantics, sentence processing, and using language. It's a program recommended by most speech pathologists in Australia to support students with language difficulties. ELR is available on an iPad and is a computer program. It's a great material to use during literacy rotations to provide extra reinforcement and to build students' phonological and articulation awareness. As I mentioned earlier, there are many other iPad and computer programs available to build students' phonological and articulation of sounds. However, you will need to check the clarity of speech with the apps before using in the classroom. To ensure the plan is successful, careful planning and consistency needs to be implemented. Repetition and reinforcement of everyday activities and literacy programs will support students' learning. Extra time for meetings with school speech pathologists, parents and specialist teachers will need to be considered for the planning of support strategies and the implementation of these strategies with students with speech sound disorders. During classroom activities, one-to-one activities and small group sessions with the teacher aides or support teachers will enhance students' literacy skills. To evaluate the success of the plan, I would monitor students' learning through regular speech screen tests and the academic improvements. And I will celebrate these improvements with the student. During class and in the playground, monitoring students' peer relationships and participation activities will show students' self-esteem and their confidence growing. I believe this plan will be successful. It provides strategies that will assist the inclusion of students with speech sound disorders by improving their articulation and speech skills. This will benefit students' collaboration with other students and teachers, as well as their literacy learning. Using everyday materials will engage students in literacy learning and build their phonological awareness. The plan presents opportunities for students with speech sound disorders to build confidence and self-esteem. It also develops our knowledge as beginning teachers to support students with speech sound disorders and reflect on our own teaching pedagogy. However, this plan does present some weakness and threats. Within state education systems, there is a lack of funding and limited time for speech pathologists. With this in mind, only a very small amount of students receive one-to-one support from school speech therapists. There is also a lack of teacher training available to support our classroom teachers and help them educate them on speech sound disorders. Families can be a weakness and a threat to this plan. As teachers, it is difficult for us to account for at-home practice and outside speech sessions. This can delay the effectiveness of the plan. Overall, with the support from parents, students, and speech teachers, including any speech therapists, this plan will support students with speech sound disorders in their literacy learning in a fair and supportive environment. Reflecting on my seminar, I found the action research model easy to follow and enhanced my understanding and knowledge of speech sound disorders within my classroom. This topic has a personal interest to me, and by researching speech sound disorders, it will be beneficial in my intern classroom. As I embark on my internship journey, I have noticed a large group of students in my class with speech difficulties. Over the past few weeks that I have volunteered, I have employed my plan into action with a few students and have noticed a slight improvement in their confidence. As teachers, we need to be flexible in planning and our teaching practices. The action research provides opportunities for the plan to change based on students' interest and knowledge, and the data we collect will also help it change. The SWOT tool utilised provided a way that I could critically analyse my plan and outline areas that I should improve on for any future purposes. What I learned about myself is that I'm more passionate about supporting students with speech and literacy and help the students with difficulties within a mainstream education and ways that I can include these students in the literacy activities. Knowing there is a limited speech pathologist in state education, I really want to help students with speech sound disorders so they feel more confident in my classroom. Through use of a teacher reflection journal, colleague observations and recording of lessons, I can reflect on my teaching practices and beliefs. This will help lead to change and improvement in my own teaching practices.